In the middle of a violent Christmas Eve blizzard, a billionaire slowed his car after spotting two small figures curled against the wall of an abandoned gas station. A teenage boy was wrapping his thin jacket around his unconscious little sister, trying to keep her alive with the last warmth in his body. When the old man rushed toward them through the snow, the boy looked up with eyes that had already seen far too much suffering. Without hesitation, the billionaire carried both children into his car, unaware that this single moment of compassion would lead him into a battle for their future, and give him the family he believed he had lost forever. Before we begin, this is a fictional story written to inspire and uplift. At Memory Stories, we believe the right story at the right moment can change everything. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the snow. Edmund Calloway gripped the steering wheel of his black Lincoln Navigator, peering through the white chaos that had swallowed the highway whole. The weather report had promised light flurries. This was not light flurries, this was nature in full fury, and he was caught dead in the middle of it. He should have stayed at the office. He should have accepted his business partner Howard's invitation to spend Christmas Eve with his family out in Brentwood. Instead, Edmund had insisted on driving back to his estate alone, where silence waited like a familiar companion he had grown far too comfortable with. At 67, Edmund Calloway had everything money could possibly buy and almost nothing that actually mattered. His company, Calloway Development Group, had made him one of the most respected real estate developers in the American South before he turned 50. His estate in Franklin, Tennessee had 16 rooms and no one to fill them. His calendar was packed with meetings involving hundreds of people who wanted his money, his time, his signature, but not a single person who wanted just him, just Edmund, the old man beneath the suit. The loneliness had started feeling normal somewhere along the way. That scared him more than he was willing to admit to anyone. He knew exactly when the emptiness had settled in for good. 5 years ago, his wife of 31 years, Margaret, had lost her long fight with Parkinson's disease. She had been 60 years old, with warm brown eyes and a laugh that could fill any room she walked into, and a habit of leaving little notes around the house for Edmund to find. Tucked into his coat pocket, propped against the coffee maker, slipped between the pages of whatever book he was reading. Notes that said things like "still choosing you" and "home is wherever you are," and once, memorably, "you burned the toast again, but I love you anyway." When the notes stopped appearing, Edmund had not known how to fill the spaces they had occupied. So he had filled them with work, with deals, with the particular numbness that comes from staying busy enough to avoid feeling anything at all. The estate had stopped being a home the morning he made coffee and found himself saving the empty spot on the counter where her mug always sat. The snow came down harder. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Edmund slowed to a crawl, squinting through the windshield, his headlights barely cutting through the white curtain ahead. He was looking for the exit toward Riverbend Road, but every landmark had vanished under the blizzard's assault. Then he saw them. At first he thought they were trash bags someone had abandoned beside the old Harmon's gas station. The station had been closed for years, a forgotten relic of a bypass that had rerouted traffic 8 miles east sometime in the 90s. But as his headlights swept across the scene, the trash bags moved. They were children. 2 small figures huddled together against the building's crumbling brick wall, barely sheltered by a broken awning that did absolutely nothing to protect them from the driving wind. Snow had piled around them, nearly burying their small forms entirely. Edmund's heart stopped cold. He slammed on the brakes and the Navigator skidded slightly before coming to a halt on the icy shoulder. He threw the vehicle into park and burst out into the storm without bothering with his coat. The cold hit him like a physical blow, the kind that steals your breath before you even know it is gone, but he barely noticed. "Hey," his voice barely carried over the howling wind. "Hey, kids." They did not move. Terror gripped his chest so hard he thought it might crack a rib. He ran toward them, his expensive leather shoes slipping on the black ice underneath the snow. As he got closer, he could make out details that made his stomach twist painfully. The older one was a boy, maybe 14 or 15. A black child wearing a thin blue jacket that might have fit him 2 years ago. His arms were wrapped entirely around a smaller child, a girl who looked about 8 or 9, trying to shield her with his own body and whatever warmth he had left to give. "Please," the word was so quiet, Edmund almost missed it entirely. "Please don't leave us like everyone else did." The boy's eyes opened slowly and found Edmund's face. They were dark brown, those eyes, and ancient with the kind of suffering no child on this earth should ever know. His lips were nearly gray. His whole body shook violently with cold, but his arms stayed wrapped around his little sister with fierce, stubborn determination. "I am not leaving you." Edmund dropped to his knees in the snow beside them, the cold soaking straight through his dress pants. "I am getting you out of here right now. You hear me? Are you real?" The boy's voice cracked at the edges. "Sometimes I think I see things that are not really there anymore." "I am real, son. I promise you I am real." Edmund reached out and touched the boy's face. Ice cold. He looked at the little girl tucked against her brother's chest. Her eyes were closed. "What is her name?" "Delia." The boy's teeth chattered hard. "She stopped answering me this morning. I kept talking to her anyway. I am Marcus. I am 15. She just turned 9 last month. 9 years old, unconscious in a blizzard on Christmas Eve." Edmund felt something break open inside his chest, something that had been sealed shut for 5 long years. "Marcus, I need you to be strong just a little bit longer. Can you walk to my car?" "I think so." But when Marcus tried to stand, his legs gave out completely beneath him. He had given everything he had to keeping his sister warm. There was simply nothing left in him. Edmund made a decision without hesitation. "Stay right here. Do not move. I will be back in 30 seconds, I promise." He ran to the navigator, wrenching open the back door and cranking the heat to maximum. He grabbed every blanket from the emergency kit he kept in the rear cargo area. Margaret had insisted he carry it years ago and he had never once removed it. His hands shook, and it was not from the cold. He ran back. Marcus had slumped sideways in the snow, still somehow keeping his arm across Delia's small body. "I have got you both." Edmund lifted Delia first. She was terrifyingly light, the kind of light that tells you something is very wrong. He carried her to the car and tucked her onto the back seat, then ran back for Marcus. The boy tried to help, tried to push himself upright, but his limbs would not cooperate anymore. "Do not fight me," Edmund said gently. "Just let me." He lifted Marcus the way he had once seen fathers lift sleeping children, carefully, protectively, like something precious. When he placed him in the car beside his sister, Marcus reached immediately for Delia's hand. "You came back," Marcus whispered. "I said I would. People say things." Edmund looked at this boy who had learned at 15 that promises were things people broke and felt something harden into resolve deep in his bones. He jumped into the driver's seat and pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Marcus's voice sharpened with sudden fear. "Calling an ambulance. No hospitals." The fear became something close to panic. "They will separate us. They always separate us. Every single time. Please." Edmund looked in the rearview mirror. This boy had been shielding his little sister with his own body in a blizzard with nothing but a thin jacket and sheer will. He had held on when most adults would have given up entirely. "My house is 12 minutes away," Edmund said. "I have a doctor who lives closer than the hospital. She can check them at my place first. But Marcus, if they need a hospital, they are going to a hospital. You understand me?" Marcus closed his eyes briefly, then he nodded. "Okay, yeah." Edmund called Dr. Sandra Briggs, who answered on the second ring with the tone of a woman who had been expecting a quiet Christmas Eve. "Edmund, it is Christmas Eve. I need you at my house right now, Sandra. 2 children. Severe hypothermia. The little girl is unconscious. I think malnutrition, maybe frostbite." A pause. Then her entire demeanor shifted, the way doctors do when the situation demands it. "How old?" 15 and 9. "I am already moving. Keep them warm. Do not warm them too fast. Talk to the little girl even if she cannot respond. I will be there before you." Edmund ended the call and pulled carefully back onto the highway. In the mirror, he watched Marcus pull both blankets tightly around Delia and press his cheek against the top of her head. "Talk to her," Edmund said. "Keep talking. She likes when I tell her about the stars," Marcus said softly. Then, in a voice that cracked every few words but never stopped, "Hey, Delia. Hey, you hear me? Remember how Grandma used to take us out to the back porch with that old flashlight and we would find constellations? Remember Orion, the one that looks like a man with a belt? You always said he looked like he was dancing." Edmund drove and listened and felt something that had been sealed shut for 5 years turn quietly toward the light. The estate gates appeared through the snow like a beacon. Dr. Sandra Briggs's car was already in the circular driveway. She came out the front door the moment Edmund pulled up, medical bag in hand, face all business. His housekeeper, Mrs. Ruth Coleman, was right behind her carrying an armful of towels and a look of fierce maternal worry that Edmund had never seen on her face in 7 years of working for him. "Bring the girl first," Sandra said immediately. Edmund carried Delia inside. The child was limp in his arms, her small face pale, her dark curls damp with melted snow. Sandra took her without ceremony. already checking pulse and temperature. "Ruth, warm water, not hot, broth if you have it, crackers." "Already on the stove," Ruth said, which told Edmund she had been listening on the phone and had not waited to be asked. Edmund went back for Marcus, who had managed to get himself upright but could not make his legs move properly. Edmund supported him all the way inside, and the boy did not fight it this time. Within 15 minutes, Sandra had transformed the downstairs sitting room into a careful field triage. She worked with the quiet efficiency of someone who had spent 20 years in emergency medicine before moving to private practice. Her expression gave nothing away, which worried Edmund more than open concern would have. "They are going to be okay," she said finally, straightening up. "But it was close. Another hour out there and we would be having a very different conversation." She glanced at Delia, whose color was already beginning to return. "The girl is dangerously dehydrated, and her core temperature was critically low. I am starting an IV. Watch her through the night. If she is not significantly improved by morning, hospital, and that is not a discussion." "Understood." "The boy is in better shape only because he spent everything he had keeping her alive." Sandra lowered her voice. "Edmund, this did not happen overnight. These children have been surviving on very little for a long time." Ruth fed them slowly and carefully, warm broth and crackers first, then soup. Marcus refused everything until Delia was eating. When Ruth finally placed a bowl in Marcus's hands, he stared at it for a long moment like he had forgotten what food was supposed to feel like. He took one spoonful, then another. Then he set the bowl down carefully and pressed the back of his hand against his mouth and cried, quietly, the way a person cries when they have been holding everything together for so long that one moment of actual safety undoes them completely. Edmund sat on the floor beside him, not crowding him, just close enough to matter. "When did you eat last?" Marcus thought about it with the careful concentration of someone doing real arithmetic. 4 days ago, maybe. Found most of a sandwich near the park on Tuesday. Gave most of it to Delia." The grief and rage that moved through Edmund Calloway in that moment was unlike anything he had felt in a boardroom or a courthouse or any of the places where he had spent his professional life. It was something older and more elemental than any of that. "How long have you two been on your own?" he asked. "About 6 weeks, Marcus said. "Maybe 7. I lost track of the exact days around week 3. He was quiet for a moment. "Our dad died 2 years ago, work accident. Mom raised us by herself after that, but she got sick last spring. By summer she was gone." He said it the way teenagers sometimes say impossible things, flatly, because if you let yourself feel the full weight all at once you will go under completely. "Social services put us in a group placement, same building at least. Then they said they needed to make new placements. Delia to a foster home in Memphis, me to a facility in Chattanooga." His jaw tightened. "I took her and we left. I know it was wrong. I know it made things harder legally, but keeping her with me was the only thing that mattered." "It was not wrong," Edmund said quietly. "You did what you had to do to protect your sister. I stole food sometimes." Marcus looked at the floor, collected bottles for money, kept us hidden in an abandoned building until it got condemned last week. You kept her alive. She is all I have left." Edmund looked at this boy, 15 years old, sitting in a warm house for the first time in weeks, still holding his little sister's hand across the blanket between them. "Do you have any other family?" Edmund asked. "Grandparents, aunts or uncles?" Something shifted in Marcus's expression. "There is our dad's brother, Uncle Vernon Pierce. He came around after Mom's funeral, mostly asking about whether there was a life insurance policy and whether Mom had any savings put aside." A pause. He did not stay for the reception. Edmund filed that information carefully away. "Let me tell you what I am thinking," he said. "I have a family attorney named Catherine Walsh. She is the best in this state. I want her to file for emergency custody on your behalf today, which keeps you and Delia together while we navigate the legal situation properly. We begin the foster certification process immediately, and I make sure that you and your sister are in the same place through every single step of it." Marcus studied him with the careful, measuring look of someone who had learned not to trust easy kindness. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "You do not know us. I know enough." Edmund met the boy's eyes. "I know you spent 6 or 7 weeks keeping your sister alive with nothing. I know you chose her over your own safety every single time. I know you are sitting here right now still holding her hand while she sleeps." He paused. "That tells me everything I need to know about who you are and what you deserve." Marcus was quiet for a long time. "What do you get out of it?" he asked. The question was blunt and completely honest. the question of a boy who had learned that nothing comes without a reason. I get to do something that actually matters, Edmund said. I have spent 20 years building things, closing deals, coming home to a house with 16 rooms and not one person who needs me to walk through the door. He thought of Margaret, of the empty spot on the kitchen counter. I had a wife once who used to tell me I worked too hard and missed too much of what was real. She was right, and I did not fully understand that until she was gone. He looked at Marcus steadily. You two are not a complication in my life. You are the first thing in 5 years that has made this house feel like it is supposed to have people living in it. Marcus looked at him for a very long moment. Then something behind his eyes shifted. Not trust exactly, not yet, but the very first thread of it beginning to form. Okay, he said quietly, I will give you a chance to prove it. Sandra stayed until past 3 in the morning monitoring Delia's vitals. Before she left, she pulled Edmund into the hallway. Delia is going to be fine. She is tough. She studied Edmund's face. Are you? Honestly, I do not know what I am right now. You stopped your car in a blizzard on Christmas Eve, she said. That is who you are. Do not lose track of that. Morning light filtered through the tall windows of the guest suite where Ruth had set up 2 beds side by side, close enough that the children could reach each other in the night. Edmund had not slept. He had spent the hours alternating between checking on the children and pulling up everything he could find about emergency custody law in Tennessee on his laptop. Marcus was awake when Edmund knocked softly and entered. Delia was still asleep, her color nearly normal now, her small chest rising and falling with steady regularity. Good morning. Edmund sat in the chair near the door, keeping his distance. How are you feeling? Better. Marcus's voice was still rough at the edges. A lot better. He looked around the room carefully. This is real. I keep thinking I am going to wake up. It is real. What happens now? Now we talk, Edmund said. Tell me everything from the beginning. I need to understand your situation fully before Catherine files anything, Marcus told him. His father, James Crawford, gone 2 years ago in a workplace accident that a better safety inspection might have prevented. His mother, Denise, who had worked 2 jobs and fought her illness with everything she had until she simply could not fight anymore. The social services placement that had felt temporary until suddenly the paperwork said otherwise. The caseworker managing too many children who had met them exactly once before the transfer orders came through. Do you have any documents? Edmund asked. Birth certificates, anything? In my backpack. It is back at the gas station if it is still there. Edmund texted his assistant before Marcus finished the sentence. By noon that day the backpack had been retrieved, still tucked against the station wall where Marcus had left it. Inside were the children's birth certificates, a few photographs of their mother, and $43 in small bills that Marcus had saved one collected bottle at a time. Edmund set everything carefully on the guest room dresser where Marcus could see it was safe. Your things are here, Edmund told him that afternoon. All of them. Marcus looked at the photographs for a long time without touching them. Then carefully he picked up the one on top. His mother, young and laughing at something off camera, her arm around a small boy who was clearly Marcus at about 7 years old. She was funny, Marcus said, not to Edmund particularly, just to the room. People do not always know that about her. They think of her as the sick woman at the end. But she was funny. She could make anybody laugh. Edmund did not say anything. He just let that truth sit in the room where it belonged. You mentioned your Uncle Vernon, Edmund said after a moment. Tell me more about him. Marcus set the photograph down carefully. He scared Mom. When she was sick, he came to the house once. He had some kind of paper he wanted her to sign. She refused and made me take Delia upstairs. After he left, she was shaking. She made me promise never to leave Delia alone with him. He looked at his hands. She did not say exactly why. She just made me promise. That matters, Edmund said. You may need to tell that story to my lawyer and to the social worker assigned to your case. Can you do that? If it keeps Delia safe, I can do anything. Delia woke up slowly, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling. When she saw Edmund, she pressed close to her brother. Marcus put his arm around her automatically, a gesture so practiced it was clearly second nature. It is okay, Delia. This is Mr. Edmund. He helped us last night. Remember, I told you someone helped us. Delia looked at Edmund with wide dark eyes. She did not speak, but after a long moment she gave a very slight nod, which Edmund understood was significant. Are you hungry? He asked. Another slight nod. Ruth had prepared a breakfast that could have fed 10 people. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, orange juice, toast with 3 kinds of jam. Marcus's eyes went wide when Edmund carried the tray upstairs. She likes strawberries, Marcus said immediately. reaching to put extra on Delia's plate before touching his own. Then she gets extra strawberries. They ate slowly at first, then with the focus of bodies that had been running on empty for too long. Edmund watched them and noticed things. Marcus was right-handed but reached across himself to hand things to Delia. The little girl ate quietly and methodically, working through her plate with the careful attention of someone who understood that food was not something to take for granted. That afternoon Catherine Walsh arrived. She was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed and brisk, with the kind of measured competence that had made her the most effective family attorney in the state for 15 years. She spent 2 hours with Marcus, taking careful notes, her expression professionally neutral. When she and Edmund stepped away privately, she was direct. Emergency custody is achievable. Foster certification takes time, but we start immediately. She looked at him squarely. Edmund, I have known you for 20 years. I need you to be certain about this. These are traumatized children. Not a project. Not a charitable gesture. Are you genuinely prepared for what that means every single day? More prepared than I have been for anything in a very long time. Then I start the paperwork tonight. She paused. You mentioned an uncle. If he surfaces with a competing claim, blood relations carry real weight in family court. We should be ready. We will be ready. That night, sitting in his study after Catherine had gone, Edmund allowed himself to feel what he had been holding at arm's length all day. Not just the weight of the responsibility he had taken on, but something warmer than that. Something that felt for the first time in 5 years like being needed, like being exactly where he was supposed to be. He thought of Margaret and her notes tucked into unexpected places. He thought she would have approved. He thought she might have been the one to stop the car, if she had been driving. She always did see things before he did. Still choosing you, her last note had said, found in his jacket pocket 3 weeks after the funeral. He wondered if this was what choosing looked like for him, stopping in a blizzard, keeping a promise, deciding that 16 rooms were too many for one old man and that some things were worth fighting for. January arrived cold and full of adjustments that Edmund had not anticipated. He had never lived with children before. He had built companies, managed crises, negotiated deals that reshaped neighborhoods, and none of it had prepared him for the particular daily reality of a 15-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl finding their footing in a new world. Marcus was guarded but not closed. He watched Edmund constantly, the way someone watches weather, trying to predict what was coming. He hoarded food in his room for the first week until Ruth sat with him one quiet afternoon and told him plainly that the pantry was always full, the kitchen was always open, and that if he woke up at 2 in the morning wanting a bowl of cereal, there would always be a bowl of cereal. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. You are not going to tell me I am being irrational. No, baby, Ruth said. You spent weeks not knowing where your next meal was coming from. That kind of thing does not just turn off because the situation changed. We are going to be patient with you. He ate dinner at the family table that night for the first time without positioning himself near the door. Delia was a different kind of challenge. She had been talkative once, Marcus told Edmund during one of their evening conversations on the back porch. Loud, actually. Full of opinions about everything. She had sung constantly, made up elaborate stories, laughed at her own jokes with complete delight. Since their mother died, she had grown quieter. Since the streets, she had stopped speaking almost entirely. She communicated through drawings. Within days the refrigerator was covered in them. Houses with lit windows, tables with food on them. 2 figures standing close together. Then carefully and gradually, a third figure appeared in the drawings, older and taller, white-haired, standing near the other 2. Edmund noticed the third figure but said nothing. He just let it be there. Dr. Sandra Briggs brought her colleague Dr. Lawrence Webb, a child psychologist who specialized in grief and trauma in young children. Dr. Webb was a patient, unhurried man in his mid-50s who had kind eyes and a gentle directness that Delia seemed to respond to without quite meaning to. He sat on the floor with her during their first session, not pushing, not prompting, simply being present while she drew. After that first session, he spoke with Edmund privately. Selective mutism, trauma-induced. The losses compounded over a very short period. Her father, then her mother, then stability, then safety. She has protected herself the only way available to her. He paused. With consistency, warmth, and genuine safety, she will come back to her voice. But she needs to feel safe in her bones, not just on the surface. That takes real time. What can I do? Exactly what you are already doing. Be present. Keep your word. Do not pressure her to speak. Let her communicate however she can. He looked at Edmund steadily. She watches you, Mr. Calloway. She is deciding what kind of person you are. Let her take as long as she needs. The social worker assigned to their case was a man named Dennis Pruitt, mid-30s, with the permanently fatigued expression of someone carrying far more cases than any one person should ever manage. He conducted the first official home visit on a gray January morning, walking through the estate with a clipboard and a carefully neutral face. "Mr. Calloway," he stopped in the hallway, making notes. "I will be direct. This situation is irregular. No prior parenting experience. You essentially assumed custody without authorization." "Your system lost them," Edmund said quietly. "They ended up in a blizzard on Christmas Eve. Tell me exactly where the irregularity is that I need to account for." Pruitt had the grace to look uncomfortable. "That is a failure I cannot defend. But going forward, proper process matters. Then let us follow it properly. Catherine Walsh has filed every necessary document. We are cooperating fully." Edmund kept his voice measured. "But those children are not leaving this house. If you attempt to move them, you will have a legal fight on your hands that takes months and ends with the same result, and in the meantime 2 children who have finally started to feel safe will have that taken from them again." Pruitt looked at his clipboard, then up. "I will note in my report that the children are safe, well cared for, and showing positive adjustment. Emergency custody stands pending certification completion." He closed the clipboard. "Mr. Calloway, I want what is best for them. So do you. That means we want the same thing. Then let us act like it." After Pruitt left, Marcus came downstairs from where he had been listening on the stairs. He looked at Edmund without speaking for a moment. "You did not let him take us. I told you I would not." "You could have," Marcus said. "It would have been simpler for you." "Simpler is not always better." Edmund sat on the bottom stair. "Marcus, before I found you two, I came home every night to a house that had 16 rooms and not one person who needed me. I had not felt necessary to anyone since my wife passed." He looked at the boy. "You and Delia are not a complication. You are the first thing in 5 years that has made me feel like a man with a reason to get up in the morning that has nothing to do with business." Marcus sat down on the step above him. It was such a small thing, choosing to sit close rather than apart, but Edmund understood what it cost this particular boy. "What if we do something wrong?" Marcus asked. "What if I fail a class or lose my temper, or Delia never talks again? Then we deal with it together. That is what family does." "I do not really remember what that feels like." "Neither do I," Edmund said honestly. "We will figure it out together. Neither of us knows exactly what we are doing, but we will both be trying. That counts for something." In February, school enrollment began. Riverside Academy, a private school with small classes and strong support services. Marcus was placed in 9th grade, behind in some subjects but with a work ethic that impressed his teachers from the first week. Delia joined the lower school, where her art teacher Mrs. Karen Simmons called Edmund after 2 weeks to tell him the girl had a genuinely exceptional talent. That same month, on a cold Saturday in the middle of February, Marcus turned 16. Edmund had been planning quietly for weeks. They went to Marcus's favorite restaurant for dinner, a barbecue place in town that Marcus had mentioned twice in passing in the careful offhand way of someone who does not want to seem like they are asking for anything. Afterward, back at the estate, Ruth had made a cake. Chocolate with chocolate frosting, because that was what Marcus had said was his favorite in a conversation weeks earlier that he probably did not realize Edmund had filed away. When they sang Happy Birthday, Marcus looked at the candles for a long moment before blowing them out. His expression was complicated and private. Later, Edmund gave him his gift, a leather-bound journal, good quality, with his name embossed on the cover. Inside the front page, Edmund had written, "For the stories you carry, you decide which ones get told." Marcus read it twice. Then he looked up. "How did you know I write things down? I noticed you watching everything, taking it all in. It seemed like something you might need." Marcus held the journal carefully. "My dad used to say that people who pay attention are the ones who eventually understand things." A pause. "He said I was going to be someone who understood things. He was right." Marcus nodded slowly, then quietly. "Thank you for all of this. Not just tonight." Edmund received those words carefully. "Happy birthday," he said simply. Marcus looked at him. Something moved through his expression, a door partly open, not yet all the way. He did not fill in a name after the thank you, and Edmund did not prompt him. Some things needed more time than others, and Edmund had learned in his 67 years that the things most worth having were always the ones you could not rush. One evening in late February, Edmund found himself in the kitchen trying to recreate Margaret's sweet potato pie from her handwritten recipe card. He had the ingredients lined up on the counter and was studying the faded handwriting with the concentration of a man attempting something beyond his experience. Marcus appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing?" "Attempting to make my wife's sweet potato pie. She always made it. I never paid close enough attention. Edmund looked at the card. I am paying attention now. Marcus looked at the counter. Can I help? You know how to bake? No. But you clearly do not either, so we are even. Edmund laughed, which surprised them both slightly. Fair point. Come in. They worked together for an hour, making several small mistakes and correcting them, arguing gently about whether the recipe card said 1/4 teaspoon or 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, deciding to split the difference. While they worked, Edmund found himself talking about Margaret, not the grief of losing her, but the living of her. The way she remembered everyone's birthday, the way she could walk into any room and immediately find the person who most needed talking to. The way she had told Edmund on their third date that she intended to marry him, stated plainly as a fact, and then waited for him to catch up. Marcus listened and measured flour and did not say much, but he was paying attention in the way Edmund had come to recognize. She sounds like she knew what she wanted, Marcus said. She always did. I was the one who needed convincing of things. Edmund paused. She would have liked you both very much. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What do you think she would have said about all this? About us being here? Edmund thought about it honestly. She would have said it was about time. He smiled at the mixing bowl. She would have said the house had been empty long enough. The pie came out imperfect, slightly darker on one side, the filling not quite as smooth as it should have been. They ate it at the kitchen table anyway, the three of them, because Delia had appeared at the smell of it and looked at Edmund with an expression that was as close to asking for something as she had gotten. It tasted like an attempt at something good. Edmund thought that was entirely enough. Spring came gradually to Franklin, turning the estate grounds green and fragrant. Marcus had settled into Riverside Academy with the focused determination of someone who understood that this chance was not guaranteed and intended to make the most of every hour of it. His English teacher, Mr. Alan Reed, sent home a progress note after the first month. Marcus works harder than any student I have seen in years. He stays after class, asks precise questions, never complains. Whatever you are doing at home, keep doing it. Delia was flourishing in art class in the lower school. Mrs. Simmons had submitted 2 of her pieces to a regional student exhibition without telling anyone, and when the acceptance letter came addressed to Delia Crawford, age 9, Marcus read it aloud at the dinner table, and Delia's face went through 5 distinct expressions in about 4 seconds before landing on a smile so wide it changed the whole shape of her face. She still did not speak much, but the words she offered were becoming more frequent and more freely given. A quiet yes or no here, a short phrase there, each one carrying the weight of something considered before being offered. Edmund had learned to receive these small gifts without making a production of them, which Dr. Webb had told him was exactly the right approach. One afternoon in early March, Ruth was teaching Delia to make cornbread at the kitchen counter. Edmund watched from the doorway as they measured and poured together, Ruth narrating each step in her easy, unhurried way. When the batter was ready and Delia stirred it with careful concentration, Ruth said, "My grandmother always said food made with patience tastes better than food made in a hurry, so let us take our time with this." Delia stirred more slowly. Then she looked up at Ruth and said softly, "It smells good already." Ruth did not make a fuss. She just said, "Yes it does, baby," and handed her the pan. But her eyes found Edmund's over Delia's head, and the look they exchanged said everything. The mural helped too. Edmund had commissioned a local artist to paint Delia's bedroom ceiling, letting her design it entirely. She had drawn a night sky full of stars, each constellation labeled in her careful handwriting, the Milky Way arching across the longest wall. When the artist finished and Edmund brought Delia in for the first time, she stood in the center of the room and turned in a slow circle looking at every inch of it. Then she walked to Edmund and wrapped her arms around his waist and held on without saying a single word. He held her back the same way. It was the last week of April when the shadow arrived at the front gate. Security called Edmund to the monitor. He reviewed the footage carefully. A man in his mid-50s stood at the gate wearing a jacket that did not quite fit right, carrying the specific kind of performed casualness that Edmund had spent decades learning to read as a careful act. The man identified himself as Vernon Pierce, Marcus and Delia's paternal uncle. Edmund went to the gate himself. Vernon Pierce had a wide smile that arrived before his eyes did, which was always a particular kind of tell. "Mr. Calloway." Vernon extended his hand as though they were meeting at a business lunch. "Social services finally told me the kids are here. I just want to see them. Family ought to be with family." "You are their uncle," Edmund said evenly. "Tell me when you last saw them." A brief hesitation. "At their mother's funeral. I had some personal difficulties that kept me from being as present as I should have been. Before the funeral." Another pause. "We lost touch for a period." "You lost touch while their father died, and their mother spent her last months fighting illness and passing away," Edmund said. "And now that they are living with me, here you are." He looked at the man steadily. Why now, Vernon? Be specific. The smile shifted underneath, a gear turning. Family is family. Blood is blood. The law recognizes that. The law also recognizes best interest. We will let the judge determine which applies. Edmund held the man's gaze. The adoption hearing is scheduled. You are welcome to present your case. Until then, you do not come to this property. You do not contact the children. You do not go near their school. Vernon left without another word, but the way he drove away told Edmund everything he needed to know about what was coming. That evening was the hardest conversation Edmund had since Christmas Eve. He gathered Marcus and Delia in the sitting room after dinner. Ruth sat nearby, her presence steady and warm. Edmund told them calmly and directly, without minimizing or catastrophizing. Marcus's face went still the way it did when he was absorbing something that required all his reserves. Delia looked at Marcus and then at Edmund, and then pressed herself against Edmund's side. He is going to try to get custody, Marcus said. Not a question. He may file a petition. If he does, we fight it legally and professionally, and we win. What if we do not? Marcus's voice was very controlled, which Edmund now understood meant he was frightened beneath the surface. Then I appeal. And if the first appeal fails, I find another avenue. Marcus, I am not walking away from this. Not from you. Not from Delia. Not ever. Marcus looked at him with the measuring gaze he still used sometimes when he needed to verify whether what Edmund said matched what Edmund meant. He's scared, Mom, Marcus said quietly. That time he came to the house when she was sick. She made me take Delia upstairs. After he left, she was shaking. She made me promise never to leave Delia alone with him. His voice stayed level. I was 12 years old and I did not fully understand why. I think I understand better now. You need to tell that to Catherine and to Dennis Pruitt, Edmund said. Every detail. Can you do that? If it keeps Delia safe. Yes, then that is what we do. Catherine Walsh moved swiftly. She documented Vernon Pierce's history of abandonment with meticulous care, pulling financial records that revealed a man facing significant debt, creditor judgments, and a bankruptcy filing dated just 6 weeks before his appearance at the gate. His sudden interest in the children had a very clear and very specific trigger. Marcus gave a formal statement about his mother's experience with Vernon. Pruitt took it seriously, and included it in his assessment. This significantly strengthens your position, Catherine told Edmund. But I will not mislead you. Family court is unpredictable. Some judges prioritize blood relation above nearly everything else. We will not know what we are walking into until we are inside that courtroom. Vernon tested boundaries before the hearing. He appeared at Riverside Academy one afternoon claiming he wanted to see his nephew and niece. Principal Howard Hayes had him escorted off the property and called Edmund within 3 minutes. Edmund arrived to find Vernon in the parking lot, past the performance of reasonableness. You are keeping me from my own blood, Vernon said. Visiting children at their school without authorization while a custody proceeding is active is something I can absolutely prevent, Edmund said, his voice quiet and completely steady. And Vernon, I know what this is really about. I know about the bankruptcy. I know about the creditor judgments. I know exactly what you see when you look at those children, and I am going to make sure the judge knows all of it. Something shifted in Vernon's face. The performance fell away entirely. You think your money makes you better than family, he said. I think those children deserve better than being used to solve someone else's financial crisis, Edmund replied. That is not about money. That is about them. He watched Vernon drive away and stood in the parking lot until the car was out of sight. Then he went inside. Principal Hayes met him at the door. Marcus was told to stay in class. He did. But Mr. Calloway, that boy watched the whole thing from the second-floor window. He saw you stand your ground. Hayes paused. I thought you should know. Edmund found Marcus after school, waiting in the hallway with a stillness that told Edmund how hard he had been working to hold himself together. He is gone, Edmund said. Marcus looked at him for a moment, then quietly, Thank you, Mr. Edmund. It was the first time Marcus had used his name with something other than formality behind it. Edmund heard the difference clearly. Delia turned 10 years old on November 19th, 4 days before the adoption hearing. Edmund had asked her weeks earlier, through the careful back and forth of nods and short phrases and drawings, what kind of birthday she wanted. She had drawn a picture in response, 4 people at a table with a cake, and beside it a smaller drawing of a night sky full of stars. They went to the planetarium in Nashville in the morning, just the 4 of them and Ruth. Delia moved through every exhibit with her sketchbook under her arm, stopping constantly to draw what she wanted to remember. At the dome show, she sat very still in the dark and watched the constellations rotate across the ceiling with an expression Edmund could only describe as recognition, like greeting old friends she had not seen in a long time. At dinner that evening, Edmund gave her his gift last. A professional-grade art set, the kind working artists used, with watercolors and brushes and a large hardbound sketchbook and colored pencils in 48 shades. Delia opened the box and touched each item with reverence. She looked up at Edmund. Her lips moved. "Thank you," she said, softly, carefully, like testing a door that had been locked for a long time and finding it open. "Thank you, Mr. Edmund." He felt the sting behind his eyes and did not try to hide it. "You are so welcome, sweetheart, so very welcome." She smiled and returned to examining the art supplies, and Marcus caught Edmund's eye across the table and gave him a look that said everything. Over the days that followed, Delia spoke with greater ease. Short phrases came more willingly now. "I like this." And one Saturday morning, watching Edmund struggle with the television remote, a single word delivered with perfect quiet timing: buttons. Marcus had laughed so hard he nearly fell off the couch. Edmund had stood there pretending to be affronted and failing completely, and Delia had looked at both of them with those steady dark eyes and allowed herself a small satisfied smile. Then one evening, 4 days before the hearing, Delia was sitting beside Edmund on the back porch while Marcus did homework inside. It was a cool November night, and Edmund had brought out 2 blankets without being asked, one for him and one for her. They sat looking at the sky together, and Delia had her sketchbook open but was not drawing, just looking. After a while she said, very quietly, "Are you scared about the court thing?" Edmund considered giving her a reassuring answer. He decided she deserved an honest one. "A little," he said. "Are you?" She nodded. "That is okay," he said. "Being scared does not mean the thing you are scared of will happen." She was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned slightly against his arm, and then so softly he almost missed it. "I do not want to go anywhere else." "You are not going anywhere else," Edmund said. "I promise you that." She leaned a little more. He put his arm around her shoulders and she tucked herself against his side, and they sat like that until the cold drove them in. 3 weeks before the hearing, Edmund took the children to visit their mother's grave on a cool Saturday morning. The cemetery was quiet, the headstone simple. The 3 of them stood together for a while, and then each did something private. Marcus placed his journal beside the stone, the leather-bound one Edmund had given him for his birthday, partially filled now. He stood with his hand resting on the cover for a long moment before stepping back. Delia set down a drawing she had made the night before. She had drawn their mother from a photograph, a careful and loving likeness, and around her she had drawn stars, the same constellations from the bedroom ceiling. Edmund stood a few feet back, giving them the space that was theirs. After a while Marcus said quietly, "We are okay, Mom. We are really okay." Delia reached up and took Marcus's hand. Then she reached back and took Edmund's. They stood like that for a while, the 3 of them in a line, in the quiet of the morning. On the drive home, Marcus held his journal in his lap. After a long silence he said, "I wrote about her in there, about who she actually was, not just that she died. That is the most important kind of thing to write down," Edmund said. Marcus looked out the window. "She trusted people who showed up," he said. "She said that was the whole test, whether somebody showed up." Edmund kept his eyes on the road. "I intend to keep showing up," he said, "for as long as you need me to." The night before the hearing, Edmund found Marcus on the back porch in the dark with a blanket around his shoulders. "Cannot sleep," Marcus said. "Neither can I. What if the judge decides blood matters more than everything else? Then I appeal that day. And the day after if I have to." Edmund sat beside him. "Marcus, whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know something. You and Delia changed my life. Not just what I do with it, who I am in it. That does not disappear regardless of what a judge rules." Marcus was quiet. "Then I actually believe you. I stopped believing people for a long time. Starting to again is a strange feeling. That is called hope. It is supposed to feel strange when you have not had it in a while." Another silence. Then Marcus said, "I want to call you something, not Mr. Edmund forever." He paused carefully. "I have been thinking about what fits. You are not my dad. You are older than that. You are more like—" He stopped, searching. "Take your time," Edmund said. "Grandpa," Marcus said finally, testing the word, hearing how it sat. "You feel like what a grandpa is supposed to feel like, steady, safe, like nothing is going to get past you." He looked at Edmund. "Is that okay?" Edmund looked at this 16-year-old boy who had stopped trusting the world and was choosing carefully and deliberately to trust him. "That is more than okay," Edmund said. Marcus nodded, satisfied the way he always was when something settled into its right place. "Okay, Grandpa." He said it again in the morning when he came downstairs and found Edmund making coffee. "Just morning, Grandpa." Casual and certain, like it had always been true. Edmund had to set down his coffee cup and look out the window for a moment before he could respond. The Williamson County Courthouse was gray stone and high ceilings, and the particular silence of formal proceedings. Catherine Walsh met them at the entrance, briefcase in hand, expression set for battle. Judge Robert Morrison presiding.
Catherine said quietly. 20 years on the bench. Thorough and fair. No established pattern either way on blood versus best interest cases. Vernon Pierce sat at the opposing table with his attorney, a man named Glenn Whitfield, whose suit was slightly too large and who had the expression of someone who knew he had a weak case and had arrived at a certain peace with that. Vernon had cleaned himself up for the occasion. Better jacket, hair combed, attempting an air of respectability, but his eyes were calculating, and Marcus saw it the moment they entered the room. Marcus reached down and took Delia's hand. She pressed against his side. "Just look at the judge," Edmund said quietly. "That is all you need to do." Judge Robert Morrison entered with the businesslike composure of someone who had seen the full range of human circumstance and had not lost his capacity to care about any particular piece of it. He settled his reading glasses and looked at the children with a directness that was neither cold nor artificially warm. "I understand this is difficult," he said. "My only job today is to listen carefully and make the best decision I can for you. Not for the adults in this room, for you." Delia held her breath. Marcus nodded once. Catherine presented their case methodically. School records documenting Marcus's remarkable academic recovery. Delia's art exhibition acceptance. Medical reports showing restored health. Dr. Webb psychological evaluations, documenting genuine and measurable healing from significant trauma. Character statements from teachers, coaches, neighbors. Dennis Pruitt's formal recommendation in favor of the adoption. She presented Vernon's financial records without editorial comment. The bankruptcy filing, the tax liens, the creditor judgments, the timeline that placed his appearance at the gate 6 weeks after the filing. The picture assembled itself without narration. Vernon's attorney offered the expected argument about blood relations and the importance of family. Judge Morrison listened and then turned to Vernon directly. "Mr. Pierce, help me understand. In the 2 years since your brother died, how many times did you have meaningful contact with your nephew and niece?" Glenn Whitfield leaned toward Vernon. Vernon waved him back. "I attended their mother's funeral, and I visited the house once when she was ill. Once. In 2 years. I had difficulties of my own." "I am sure you did," Judge Morrison said. His tone was not unkind, but it was precise. "The children will address the court now." Marcus walked to the witness chair with his chin up. He looked like exactly what he was, a 16-year-old boy who had grown up faster than anyone should have to, carrying himself with the particular dignity of someone who has nothing left to prove except the truth. "Tell me about living with Mr. Calloway," Judge Morrison said. "He saved us," Marcus said. "Not just that night in the blizzard. Every day since. He shows up. He is there for homework and bad test grades and when Delia has a hard night and when I need someone to sit with me without talking for a while." He paused. "He told me once that his wife used to say he worked too hard and missed too much of what was real. I think finding us was him finally stopping missing it." He looked at Edmund briefly. "He taught me that being helped does not mean being weak. That is harder to learn than it sounds when you have been on your own a long time. And your uncle's petition." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Vernon Pierce did not come for us. He came for what we represent financially. My mother knew it. She was frightened of him when she was sick. He does not get to claim us now because it has become convenient." His voice stayed level throughout. "I will not let him use my sister." "What do you want, Marcus?" "Clearly and simply. I want to stay with Mr. Calloway. I want Delia to keep getting better. I want somewhere permanent where no one can keep moving us around." He looked at Edmund steadily. "I want the man I already call Grandpa to be my family on paper the same way he is in real life." A quiet moved through the courtroom. Delia was called next. She walked to the witness chair and sat down, folding her hands in her lap and looking at Judge Morrison with her steady dark eyes. "Delia, do you understand why we are here today?" A nod. "I know speaking is sometimes hard. You can nod right or show me anything you need to." The judge's voice was genuinely gentle. "Can you tell me where you want to live?" Delia reached into her jacket pocket and drew out a piece of paper she had folded there that morning. Edmund had not known about it. She unfolded it carefully and held it up. It was a drawing. A house with lit windows and stars in the sky above. A tall, older white-haired figure and 2 smaller ones standing in front, holding hands. In her careful handwriting at the bottom, "Home is where Grandpa is." Several people in the courtroom went very still. "Is that your home?" Judge Morrison asked. Delia nodded, clear and emphatic. "Do you want to stay there?" The nod was the most unambiguous thing she had done in months. "What about your uncle? Mr. Pierce?" Delia looked at Vernon Pierce for exactly 2 seconds. Then she climbed down from the witness chair, walked back to Edmund, and pressed herself against his side with both arms wrapped around him. No one in the courtroom misread the message. Judge Morrison looked at Vernon for a long, quiet moment. "Mr. Pierce, I am going to ask you directly. Be honest with me. Why do you want custody of these children now, when you had years of opportunity to be present in their lives and were not?" Glenn Whitfield leaned in urgently. Vernon looked at his lawyer, then at the judge, then at the two children across the room. Something in his face shifted, the exhaustion of a man who has been performing something for too long and has finally run out of the energy it takes. "I am in financial trouble," he said flatly. "The foster care payments would help. There is a small policy from their mother. I need the money. I thought maybe I could do right by my brother's kids while getting myself stable." He looked at the table. "I know how that sounds." "It sounds honest," Judge Morrison said. "It also sounds like a plan that places your needs first and the children second." He looked at his papers. "These children lost their father and their mother within 2 years. They lived unsheltered in winter rather than be separated from each other. They have been in the care of Mr. Calloway for nearly 5 months, during which time they have made documented and significant progress by every measurable standard." He set down the papers. "The law gives weight to blood relation, Mr. Pierce. It does not give that weight to blood relation that was absent when needed, and present only when convenient." He looked at Edmund. "Mr. Calloway, why do you want to adopt these children?" Edmund stood, still holding Delia close to his side. "Your Honor, 5 years ago I lost my wife of 31 years. She was the person who made our house a home, and when she was gone I did not know how to do that myself. I filled the space with work and accomplishments that meant very little when I came home to an empty house every evening." He looked at Marcus. "When I found these 2 children in that blizzard, I was not looking for a family. I just could not drive past them. That is all. I just could not do it." He paused. "In the months since, they have given me back something I did not know how to find on my own. They have made this house a home again. Not because it is easy, because it is not, but because they are real and they are mine, and I am theirs. That is what family is. Not paperwork, not biology. It is showing up and staying and meaning it every single day." He looked at the judge steadily. "My granddaughter calls me Grandpa. My grandson calls me Grandpa. I would like the law to agree with them." Judge Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. "Mr. Pierce's petition for custody is denied. Mr. Calloway's petition for adoption is granted. Effective upon the signing of this order, Edmund Calloway is the legal guardian and grandfather of Marcus and Delia Crawford. Their surnames remain Crawford unless they choose otherwise. Mr. Pierce is denied visitation. A restraining order is issued preventing direct or indirect contact." For one full heartbeat the room was absolutely silent. Then Marcus made a sound Edmund had never heard from him before, something broken open and released all at once. Delia looked up at Edmund with her wide dark eyes full to the edges. "Grandpa," she said. The word she had been saving for this moment, clear and certain and final. Edmund pulled both children close and held on with everything he had.
The weeks that followed the adoption had a different quality to them. Something had settled the way a house settles after the foundation is finally properly laid. Marcus was still guarded in the specific ways trauma leaves its marks, checking the door locks at night sometimes, waking occasionally from dreams he did not want to describe, but he was also gradually and unmistakably becoming a teenager again. He made a friend at school named Jake Torres, the goalkeeper on the soccer team, and the two of them spent a Saturday afternoon in the backyard arguing about a video game with the passionate absurdity of people who have decided this matters enormously. Marcus laughed 3 times in the span of an hour, real laughter, unguarded and free. Edmund stood in the kitchen doorway listening and felt something warm and quiet move through him. Such an ordinary thing, such a perfect necessary, ordinary thing. Delia's voice came back in fuller measure as December moved into January. She was not loud yet, not the way Marcus said she used to be, but she was present. She narrated things she noticed, she asked questions. She told Ruth one morning that the cornbread they were making together was better than the first time, and when Ruth asked why, Delia thought about it seriously and said, "Because we know each other better now." Ruth had to step away for a moment after that. In January, Marcus had a difficult week. It started with a failed math test, a 64, not catastrophic but enough to knock loose something that had been holding. He came home quiet and went straight to his room. Edmund let him have the evening. The next morning at breakfast Marcus was short-tempered and distant. Edmund did not push. By Thursday something had been building, and when Edmund reminded Marcus that his tutoring session was that afternoon, Marcus put both hands flat on the counter and said with real heat, I know about the tutoring session. I know I am behind. I know I have been here almost a year and I am still behind. You do not have to keep reminding me." Edmund was quiet for a moment, then he said, "You are right, I do not need to remind you, I am sorry." Marcus looked at him, startled by the apology. "I am not telling you to feel differently than you feel," Edmund said. "Being behind is frustrating. Feeling like you should be further along is frustrating. Those are legitimate feelings." He sat down at the counter. But Marcus, you came in behind because you spent a year keeping yourself and your sister alive on the street. That is not a personal failure, that is an impossible situation. You are allowed to be angry about it. The tension in Marcus's shoulders shifted downward. I just want to catch up, he said, quieter now. I just want to feel like I actually belong here. You do belong here, Edmund said. The belonging is not contingent on the grades. Marcus looked at the counter. It does not always feel that way. I know. That feeling is the wound talking. It takes time for the wound to stop being louder than the truth. Edmund looked at him steadily. The truth is that you belong here, full stop. The grades are separate. That evening Marcus came downstairs and sat at the kitchen table and worked on his math for 2 hours, and he asked Edmund for help twice, which was 2 more times than he ever had before. Delia continued her art program at the community center on Saturday mornings, coming home each week with new techniques and a quiet satisfaction that settled on her like light. Her drawings shifted gradually from the same safe images into more complex territory. Landscapes with weather in them, people in motion, faces expressing things. One Saturday afternoon she showed Edmund a new piece without being asked. It was a drawing of an old man sitting on porch steps in the dark. A teenage boy sitting one step above him, both looking out at nothing in particular. She had captured something true about the posture of 2 people sitting in comfortable silence together. Is that us? Edmund asked. Delia nodded. It is a very good drawing, Edmund said. You got the porch light exactly right. She smiled and took it back upstairs and added it to the wall above her desk, where she kept the ones that mattered most. In the spring, Marcus discovered debate. His teacher, Mrs. Patricia Holt, had suggested the team almost as a passing remark, and Marcus had gone to one practice out of mild curiosity and come home with the expression of someone who has found something they had not known they were looking for. I thought debate was for people who like to argue for the sake of arguing, he told Edmund over dinner. Is it not? Marcus thought about it seriously. I like arguing for things that are true. That is different. That is not just argument, it is trying to make something real clear to someone who does not see it yet. That, Edmund said, is the best possible reason to learn how to argue. They had a long conversation that evening about what Marcus might want to do with his life. Marcus talked carefully, like someone testing unfamiliar ground, about law, about systems and how they fail people, about what a person with the right training might be able to do about some of those failures. Edmund listened without steering. You would be very good at that, he said when Marcus finished. You really think so? I think you have been making arguments in impossible circumstances since you were 13 years old. Imagine what you can do with training. Marcus looked out the window at the backyard where Delia was drawing in her sketchbook in the late afternoon light. I want to be the kind of person she can always count on, he said. Not just now, when we are grown. Always. You already are, Edmund said. The law degree would just make it official. In February of the following year, word came through Catherine Walsh that Vernon Pierce had been found deceased. A heart attack, sudden and massive, in his apartment. He had been alone. Edmund told the children that evening after dinner, gently and directly. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Delia watched her brother's face. Are we supposed to be sad? Delia asked. You are allowed to feel whatever you actually feel, Edmund said. There is no required response. Marcus looked at his hands. I feel relieved, and then I feel bad for feeling relieved. He looked up. Is that wrong? No, Edmund said. It is human. Dr. Webb helped them through it. The following week, working carefully with each child and then together. He helped them name what they were experiencing. The grief not for the person as he was, but for the uncle he had never chosen to be. The potential that existed and was never used. You do not have to pretend to mourn someone who frightened you, Dr. Webb told them. You can simply acknowledge that a complicated person is gone, and that his being gone has removed something you were carrying. Both things are real at the same time. With Vernon gone, something in the household relaxed in a way Edmund had not fully realized was still tensed. Marcus stopped checking the front gate camera on his phone before bed. Delia started leaving her bedroom door open at night instead of almost closed. Small things, significant things. In March, Edmund sat the children down and told them what he had been building toward since the fall. A foundation, he said, focused on children in the foster system who are at risk of being separated from their siblings. Legal resources, advocacy, emergency support, the kind of help that might have kept you from ever ending up in a blizzard. Marcus looked at him steadily. You are naming it after us. I was thinking about that. What do you think? Marcus turned something over in his mind. Then, name it after Mom, Denise Crawford. She fought for us as long as she could. She deserves to have her name on something good that keeps going after her. Edmund looked at this young man for a long time. The Denise Crawford Foundation, he said. Yes, that is exactly right. Delia drew a logo for it that week without being asked, two small figures holding hands against a background of rising light, with stars above them. Edmund's design team looked at it and reproduced it with almost no alteration because there was nothing to improve. The foundation launched in April. Catherine Walsh joined the board. Dennis Pruitt agreed to serve as a community advisor. Dr. Webb provided clinical consultation. About 40 people gathered in the formal room that had always felt too large for any single occasion until now. Marcus had not planned to speak, but a week before the event he came to Edmund's study and stood in the doorway. I want to say something at the launch. Someone who has actually been through it should be the one to explain what it was like. Are you sure? I have been thinking about what debate taught me, that the best arguments come from the truest things. He paused. This is the most true thing I know. It should be said out loud. He stood at the podium with 40 people watching and spoke for 4 minutes without notes. He described what it was to be a child whose file got lost in an overwhelmed system, what it was to choose the street over separation, what it was to be 15 years old in a blizzard thinking you had made a choice that might cost your sister her life, and then what it was when someone stopped. One person stopping, Marcus said, changed everything. That is what this foundation is about. Making sure more people stop, making sure the systems and the resources are in place so that more children get what we got, which was a chance. He paused. I am not a charity case. I am not a rescue story. I am a kid who got a fair shot when someone decided we deserved one. He looked at Edmund. Thank you for deciding that, Grandpa. The room was very still. Delia, seated in the front row, held up her drawing of the two figures holding hands. Thanksgiving that year brought their people to the table. Sandra and her husband, Catherine and her daughter, Dr. Webb, Dennis Pruitt and his wife, Ruth's daughter who had become Delia's particular favorite. The table was loud and full and required 2 extra chairs. Before the meal, Edmund asked everyone to share one thing they were grateful for. Marcus said, having a permanent address. Being able to fill out forms without lying about where I live. Delia said, stars on my ceiling, and having a voice to say so. When it was Edmund's turn, he looked at his 2 grandchildren on either side of him. I am grateful, he said, for a blizzard that knew better than I did what I needed. Marcus smiled. The full one he gave more freely now than he used to. Speech, Delia said, perfectly seriously. Everyone laughed, and the sound of it filled every room of that house, and Edmund thought that Margaret would have loved every loud, imperfect, joyful bit of it, and that somewhere she probably knew. Christmas Eve arrived exactly 1 year from the night everything changed. Edmund was awake before dawn. He lay in bed listening to the quiet of the house, and thought about who he had been 365 days ago. An old man in a car in a storm, going home to a house full of absence. Certain that the best of his life was behind him. He got up and made coffee and stood at the kitchen window watching the early light come across the frost on the back lawn. He thought about Margaret, about the note in his coat pocket, about the way she used to say that the best things never arrived the way you planned them. They arrived in the middle of blizzards, when you were not looking, when you had already decided the evening was going to be one particular kind of thing, and the world had other intentions entirely. Ruth found him there at 6:30. Merry Christmas Eve, she said, pouring herself a cup. How long have you worked for me, Ruth? 7 years and 2 months. In that time was I a good person? She considered this with the honesty she had always given him. You were a fair person, generous with your money, not unkind, but you were somewhere else most of the time. Like you had decided the real life was always happening somewhere other than where you were. She sipped her coffee. You are here now, both feet in. That is different. They did that. I know, so did you. You stopped the car. Marcus came downstairs at 7. Sleep-rumpled, and poured himself orange juice. He sat at the counter and looked out the same window Edmund had been looking out. You know what today is, he said. I know. A year. A year. Marcus drank his juice and was quiet for a moment. I could not have imagined this. A year ago I was trying to figure out how to keep Delia warm through one more night. I could not see any further than the next 12 hours. He set down the glass. Now I am thinking about law school, about the foundation, about debate, about what comes next. A pause. I could not have imagined being allowed to think that far ahead. You are allowed, Edmund said. You always were. The circumstances just did not let you. Delia came down at 7:45 with her hair in 2 puffs, and her sketchbook under her arm. She hugged Edmund around the middle, the natural easy way she had developed over months of practice, and then climbed onto the kitchen stool, and opened her sketchbook, and began to draw with the focused contentment of a person doing exactly what they were made to do. What are you making? Marcus asked. A present, she said, without looking up. Do not look. That morning the 3 of them loaded the Navigator with the boxes they had been filling for 2 weeks, warm coats in every size, blankets, non-perishable food, backpacks for children filled with necessities, art supplies because Delia had insisted, books because Marcus had insisted, gift cards because Edmund had insisted, They drove to the family shelter downtown, where the director, a woman named Lois Crawford, no relation, met them at the entrance with warmth that told Edmund she understood exactly what this visit meant. The shelter's common room was full, families, couples, individuals, children, running between the chairs, the particular human warmth of people doing their best in difficult circumstances. Marcus and Delia carried boxes alongside Edmund, stacking them in the donation room. When they finished, Marcus stood at the threshold of the common area and looked out at the people gathered there. "That was us," he said quietly. "Different night," Edmund said. "Same cold, same fear." Marcus looked at the families. "I want to say something to them." Lois got the room's attention. Marcus stood where everyone could see him, and spoke without notes. "My name is Marcus Crawford. A year ago tonight my sister and I were in a blizzard with nowhere to go. We had been in foster care. We had been moved around. The system had lost track of us and we ended up on the street. I was 15, she was 8. I thought I had made a terrible mistake that might cost my sister her life." The room was completely still. Then a man stopped. He did not know us. He had no obligation to help us. He just stopped. Marcus paused. "That man is our grandfather now. Legally, officially, permanently. And we are here today because we know what it is to be where you are. And we wanted you to know that someone sees you." Someone stopped. "Things can change." He looked at a woman in the corner holding a small child. "Hold on." Delia moved through the room, placing a small hand-drawn card into every hand. Edmund had not known she had made them. She must have spent hours on each one, every card different, every card a careful drawing of something warm and bright. A lit window, a table with food, a night sky full of stars with Orion's belt visible if you knew where to look. When she reached a little boy sitting alone near the window, she knelt down to his level. She held out her card. He took it and examined it with great seriousness. "Do you know about Orion?" Delia asked him. "He is the hunter. He has 3 stars in a row for his belt. If you go outside tonight, you can find him." The boy nodded. "He is always there," Delia said. "Even when you cannot see the stars he is there." She stood and came back to Edmund. He put his hand on her shoulder and she leaned against him, and they stood like that in the warm crowded room, while Marcus finished a conversation near the door with a young man who had questions about the foundation. They drove afterward to the gas station. It was unremarkable in daylight, the way the sights of extraordinary things so often turn out to be. Just a closed building off a bypass road. Snow on the ground, the light quiet kind that turns everything silver and soft. They stood together in front of it. Edmund, Marcus, Delia. "It looks small," Marcus said. "It was everything," Delia said. "Yeah." Marcus put his hands in his coat pockets. "It really was." Edmund looked at the two of them standing in the spot where the direction of his life had changed entirely and irrevocably. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Delia took his hand. Marcus fell into step on his other side, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Let us go home, Grandpa." The house was lit up when they pulled into the driveway, every window warm, Ruth's wreath on the front door. They came inside to roasting turkey and cinnamon and the gingerbread cookies Ruth and Delia had been planning as a surprise for 2 weeks. That evening after dinner, after the gifts were opened, after the long comfortable hours of a family at ease in their own home, Edmund sat in his study and looked at the photo on his desk. It had been taken in September, a Saturday afternoon in the backyard. Marcus was mid-laugh at something off-camera. Delia was looking directly at the lens with her steady dark eyes and her full real smile. Edmund was between them, one hand on each of their shoulders, his white hair catching the afternoon light, and the expression on his face was one he had not recognized at first when the photographer showed it to him. He looked like a man who was home. He thought of Margaret. He thought she would have left a note about this, something small and precise and exactly right. He could almost hear what it would say. "Told you the best things arrive when you are not looking." His phone lit up. A text from Marcus. "You awake?" "Unfortunately yes. You? Been thinking? About next year. Law school eventually. The foundation. Delia's art show in the spring. Good stuff. Good stuff or worrying stuff? Mostly good. That is still new for me. Having mostly good thoughts. You will get used to it. Can I tell you something? Always. Mom used to say the whole test was whether somebody showed up. That is all. Just whether they showed up. She was a wise woman. Yeah, she was. A pause. You show up every day, Grandpa. Every single day. I just wanted you to know I see it. Edmund looked at the photo on his desk for a long moment before typing back. I see you too, son. Every single day. Now sleep. Merry Christmas, Grandpa. Merry Christmas, Marcus. He set down the phone and looked out the window. Snow was falling again, soft and unhurried, the kind that does not threaten anything, the kind that just makes the world quiet and full of light. A year ago a blizzard had brought them together. Tonight gentle snow reminded them how far they had come. 3 people, all carrying losses, all healing together, all learning that family was not about biology or paperwork, or the conventional ways people found each other. Family was about stopping, about staying through the hard parts, about choosing each other every single day and meaning it every time. His phone lit up once more. A photo from Delia sent from her room where she was supposed to be sleeping. A drawing she had made that evening. 3 people standing in snow, holding hands. Stars above them in a careful sky. Orion's belt visible if you knew where to look. An old white-haired man in the middle. A tall teenager on one side. A small girl on the other. And at the bottom in her precise handwriting. Our forever family. Me, Marcus and Grandpa. Edmund saved the picture. Then he sat for a long while in the quiet of a house that was no longer empty, listening to his grandchildren breathe in their rooms down the hall, and felt the particular fullness of a life that had finally completely become what it was always supposed to be. Outside the snow came down soft and steady, covering everything it touched in something that looked from inside where it was warm, very much like Grace. 1 year after that snowy night, the house that once held only silence was filled with laughter, footsteps and the quiet certainty of belonging. Edmund had stopped his car to save 2 children, but in truth they had saved him too. Sometimes it takes only one small moment of kindness to change the direction of several lives at once. If this story touched you, please like, share and subscribe so more people can hear it. And tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced a moment when one simple act of kindness changed everything?